Good morning. It's 8:09 in the morning. Let's take a live look over the city of Detroit this morning. Believe it or not, it was 12 years ago today. The city became the largest city to ever file for Chapter 9 bankruptcy. This headline shocked the world, but the city had a feeling it had been coming for a while. At the time, the city had an $18 billion debt. 40% of its streetlights just didn't work. And there were more than 78,000 abandoned buildings littered throughout Detroit. Now, those poor city services, the debt, all well known to us, and the city spiraled into emergency management. After failing to persuade a group of creditors, unions, and pension boards to take cuts, emergency manager Kevin Orr filed for Chapter 9 bankruptcy with the support of then Michigan Governor Rick Snyder. Now, let's take a look at where we've come. For the 11th straight year, the city's credit score has gone up. Billions of dollars of investment coming into Detroit with the new Hudson building, a new Henry Ford Tower, MSU research facility, new green space, and affordable housing. In addition, the city is growing. Recent census data shows the city gained more than 7,000 Detroiters, reversing a 60-year trend, and the city is now leading the state of Michigan in population growth. That is some great news to share. So we're going to expand our conversation this morning. Joining me now to talk about how far Detroit has come and what needs to still happen. We have Nathan Bomey. He covered the bankruptcy as a reporter for the Detroit Free Press, wrote a book about it called Detroit Resurrected to Bankruptcy and Back, and he co-wrote and produced a documentary about it all. He's a busy guy. He's a reporter for Axios right now. Thank you so much for joining us. I do appreciate you taking the time. I can't believe it's been 12 years. I mean, we're both reporters here in the city. We remember how it developed. When you take a look back, what do you believe in your reporting were the main factors that led to this historic municipal bankruptcy?
Well, everyone has an opinion on how Detroit went broke, and the reality is that everyone is right because there were so many different factors. This was about industrial disinvestment, the collapse of the auto industry, the decline of the city's population, the racism that caused the city's real estate to be basically extremely limited to white folks. I mean, we're talking about crime, we're talking about corruption, we're talking about borrowing. Anything you want to cite, it was a factor. And, on July 18th, 2013, Detroit hit rock bottom, but also that same day, Detroit finally had a chance to start anew.
You have a long list there. Do you feel like there was one that, let's say, I don't know if I'm going to say it's the biggest thing, but really, was that straw that really changed the direction?
I think the collapse of the city's revenue base is the primary reason that drove the city's bankruptcy, because this was a city that was built for nearly 2 million people, had a tremendous property tax base, was one of the wealthiest cities in the world at one point, and that collapsed over time, which made it so that the city had to start borrowing, and they borrowed too much, and then they couldn't pay those bills because they didn't have the revenue to pay it. And so something had to be done. I mean, there was, if the city had continued to do this, a few years later, they would have been paying about 70% of their budget to debt, which means that's stuff that doesn't help city services, doesn't help the people of Detroit. Something had to change.
So what do you think were some of the key decisions that had to be made to get us from bankruptcy out of it? Because you obviously have to make some strategic decisions before you even start seeing the success.
They made some really hard decisions. I mean, for starters, they cut the Wall Street debt that they owed. That made Wall Street upset. They cut the pensions. That made the retirees upset. And they cut all sorts of other elements of their debt because they simply couldn't afford to pay those bills anymore. The good news is that they were able to get this grand bargain that involved a bunch of foundations contributing money and the state of Michigan kicking in some money to keep the pension cuts more manageable than was originally envisioned. And that set the city up to really pull off this revival that you talked about.
Now, we talked a little bit about some of the successes, obviously, at the top when I introduced you, Nathan, but when you take a look from your perspective through your interviews, in terms of changing economically since the bankruptcy 12 years ago, what were some key factors from your opinion?
Well, I think what you see is that the city of Detroit is a place where people want to invest now because they know that the budget is in good shape. They know that the city is being well run. You mentioned the city has got an investment grade credit rating at this point. If you could go back to the day the city filed for bankruptcy and said in 12 years the city's going to have an investment grade credit rating, you'd say that is a smashing success. And what that does is it gives investors the confidence that they can come in and put money in the city. And so they don't have to worry anymore that the city budget is going to be a total disaster, that the police aren't going to come if they call the police, and that the bus system might not get their people to work. So that, ultimately it created this floor, a foundation for people to be able to build.
Let's talk about sustainability. Obviously, it's important when someone comes to town, builds something, brings jobs, but we need this to be continual. What does Detroit need to see to ensure sustained economic stability?
Well, I think they need to be very vigilant about the budget. This is not a wealthy city, not a city that has a lot of room to spare, and there will be crises in the future. And so they've got to be very, diligent and vigilant about how they continue to manage the budget. But I think the good news is that the folks that are there leading the way seem to understand that, and that credit rating is key. And the folks who are looking at the city's budget on a daily basis believe that they're managing their finances well.
When you're taking a look, obviously we're talking successes. From your perspective, is there anything here that you're seeing, this is great, this is a great progress, but maybe we could fine tune A, B, and C just to better ensure economic stability?
Well, I think that the city has to continue to try to grow its tax base in some way or another. I think they need to try to continue to attract people. It's good news that the population has increased. I think probably the biggest crisis that continues to face the city and will limit its growth is the education system. I think ultimately, improving the school system is something that is going to be a limiting factor for the city's growth until that's addressed. Because if you're a family of a few, kids, are you willing to move to Detroit? Perhaps you're single, you're willing to move. You don't have to worry about the schools. But if you have kids in school, you might be a little more hesitant to move there. And so I think that's going to be a limiting factor for the city's recovery until something's done about it.
I think you see that obviously in a lot of major cities too. But yeah, you're right. Education is huge. If you're a young person, you've got this great job, but you're not sure if you want to have your kids to stay in the Detroit schools, you are moving, and then that's when it tumbles down for everyone. Let's talk image. Obviously we've been in the spotlight with, big events, NFL draft, Grand Prix, a variety of things. Even Detroit Lions, brings back a lot of energy to our city. How important do you feel is the image of Detroit, and what else needs to be done to get folks to come here, move here, invest in this city?
I think that the city's image has had a massive turnaround in the last decade plus. I think it's a city now that's viewed by many as a very vibrant place to go out and hang out, to go and work, and a place that has a little true grit and resiliency, an inspiring place to be. I think you look at a project like the Ford, train station and reinvestment and renovation. I think that is very symbolic in a lot of ways, very meaningful, but symbolic because that was a property that was often used in all these quote unquote ruin porn, montages that people would show to say, look at how Detroit is dead. Now it's back alive, and it gives people, in terms of the image you asked about, it's completely reinvented that image. And I think that, that's a critical thing for the city to continue to keep in mind.
I completely agree with you. I remember that summer night last summer, with that concert. And then you see the continual growth and the small businesses inside there, and you see the energy. And it is definitely a transformation. Nathan, we appreciate it. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us about then and now. And I assume we'll be checking back in with you. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Anytime. Thanks.
All right. Good Friday.